Ladies, from the beginning of time, abundance has never been scarce, only the understanding of it has been hidden. Wealth is not something to be chased, struggled for, or earned through anxiety. It is a divine inheritance, placed within every soul by infinite intelligence. When we awaken to this truth, money ceases to be a burden and becomes a servant, flowing into our lives through channels already prepared. Debt, therefore, is not a life sentence but a mistaken belief, one that dissolves the moment we align our thoughts, words, and expectations with divine law. There is a universal order governing prosperity, just as surely as there is an order governing the stars. When a person believes they must suffer, sacrifice, or fear to obtain wealth, they unknowingly block the very supply meant for them. Fear contracts, faith expands. The mind that constantly says, "I never have enough," commands lack. The mind that declares, "My supply is endless and arrives on time," sets unseen forces into action. Words are living things, and every spoken thought moves into form. God-given wealth is not merely money, it is right thinking, right action, and right timing. When one is guided by divine wisdom, they are led away from reckless spending, harmful obligations, and unnecessary debt. Opportunities appear naturally, often in ways that seem miraculous to the reasoning mind. A debt-free future is not achieved through force, but through harmony. When you are in harmony with divine supply, obligations melt away, bills are met without strain, and provision comes from unexpected directions. Many believe debt is normal, even unavoidable, but divine law knows nothing of bondage. Freedom is the natural state of the soul. When a person understands that they are backed by infinite resources, panic loses its power. The subconscious mind, once impressed with truth, begins to rearrange circumstances. Old debts are paid, new income streams emerge, and generosity becomes effortless. What once felt heavy becomes light. The secret is simple yet profound: expect good, expect provision, expect divine order. When expectation is pure and unwavering, the universe responds with precision. Wealth does not respond to desperation, it responds to calm assurance. A peaceful mind is a powerful magnet. When you release the struggle and trust divine intelligence to manage outcomes, money flows with ease and grace. A debt-free future begins in consciousness before it ever appears in the bank account. As you claim your divine right to abundance, you step into a higher law, one where supply precedes demand and blessings arrive before fear can speak. You were never meant to live beneath obligation or burden. You were designed to walk in freedom, supported by unseen hands, guided by wisdom that never fails, and sustained by a wealth that has always been yours. Wealth is a divine inheritance, not earned through struggle or fear. From the moment we enter this world, we are born into an infinite universe, a universe that is filled with abundance in every direction. The concept of wealth is not something that is reserved for a chosen few, or those who labor tirelessly under pressure and anxiety. It is not a prize to be won through long hours, competition, or the unrelenting pursuit of material gain. True wealth is an inherent quality, a divine endowment placed within the human spirit by the creative intelligence of the universe. To understand this is to awaken to a reality where money, resources, opportunities, and prosperity are natural extensions of the soul's alignment with the divine. Every person carries within them the capacity to access this abundance, not as a result of struggle or force, but through recognition and conscious cooperation with the law of supply that governs all life. When one begins to see wealth not as something outside to be acquired, but as something inside to be recognized, the entire approach to life changes. One stops seeing life as a battle for survival and begins to see life as a harmonious flow where the universe is eager to provide, eager to support, and eager to supply every need according to divine wisdom. The idea that wealth must be wrested from the world through effort and fear is one of the greatest misconceptions that the human mind has ever embraced. Society teaches from an early age that financial security comes only from toil, sacrifice, and sometimes ruthless ambition. Those who have awakened to the truth of their divine inheritance understand that this is a limited and mistaken viewpoint. Wealth does not come from struggle. Struggle is a sign of resistance to the natural flow of abundance. Struggle arises when one attempts to control outcomes, manipulate circumstances, or demand supply through fear-based thinking. It is the mind in tension, the heart in worry, and the spirit in doubt that produces lack. Conversely, when one aligns with the understanding that wealth is a divine gift already present within, a miraculous shift occurs. The individual begins to operate from a place of peace, confidence, and inner knowing. Actions are taken with clarity, opportunities are recognized without anxiety, and resources begin to appear in ways that feel effortless, timely, and perfectly coordinated. The very concept of inheritance implies that it is already yours, placed into your possession by design. Just as the sun rises every day without effort, just as air fills your lungs without labor, so too does abundance exist for you naturally. There is a universal law that governs supply and provision, and this law is impartial, infinite, and omnipresent. It does not judge your worthiness based on education, social standing, or financial history. It responds to consciousness, belief, and alignment with divine truth. When a person embraces the reality that wealth is a natural state of being rather than a reward for effort, their entire relationship with money transforms. The energy of tension, fear, and scarcity is released, and in its place arises the energy of expectancy, gratitude, and faith. This shift is subtle yet profound. It is not something that can be measured immediately by external standards, but it becomes visible over time as circumstances begin to align with this inner truth. Opportunities manifest, debts dissolve, investments prosper, and the mind recognizes possibilities that were invisible before. Struggle and fear are fundamentally oppositional to divine inheritance. Fear is a contraction. It closes the mind to the flow of abundance. Struggle implies a separation from natural supply, a belief that one must wrestle and fight to earn what is already theirs. When an individual operates from fear, the subconscious mind interprets this as a command for limitation. The universal intelligence, which responds to every thought and feeling, then mirrors this belief in the outer world, creating experiences of scarcity, missed opportunities, and financial pressure. On the other hand, when one understands that wealth is a birthright, an inheritance, and a divine gift, the mind begins to relax, and the subconscious aligns with provision rather than limitation. Confidence replaces anxiety, expectation replaces worry, and creativity replaces desperation. This alignment is not a matter of wishful thinking, it is a spiritual law that governs all manifestation. Every financial situation, large or small, responds to the consciousness behind it. Recognizing wealth as a divine inheritance also changes the way one interacts with money. It is no longer a source of stress or a measure of self-worth. It becomes a tool, a servant, a means of expressing gratitude and expanding life. Money moves easily when it is seen in this light. When one is aligned with the knowledge that abundance is already theirs, spending and saving are no longer acts of fear but acts of wisdom and intention. Investments are made with clarity, bills are paid with ease, and generosity flows naturally. This consciousness transforms the very fabric of daily life, creating a sense of ease and freedom that is impossible when wealth is pursued through struggle or fear. Each transaction, each decision, each financial choice becomes an affirmation of divine provision rather than a negotiation with limitation. The idea of struggle as the pathway to wealth is further contradicted by the fact that the universe is abundant beyond measure. There is no shortage, no scarcity, and no limitation in the creative intelligence that governs all things. The resources you need, the opportunities you seek, and the solutions to financial challenges are already in existence, awaiting your recognition and cooperation. When you accept that wealth is a divine inheritance, you begin to see that everything you require is already aligned for your benefit. The only obstacle is the belief that you must earn, fight, or fear your way into provision. By releasing this belief, you open the door to a life where money flows easily, debts dissolve naturally, and abundance becomes a constant, unwavering presence in your experience. Every moment, the universe is inviting you to remember this truth. Your thoughts, words, and intentions are the instruments through which you claim this inheritance. By focusing on the divine nature of wealth, by affirming that provision is yours by right, and by releasing all fear and struggle, you activate the law of abundance. Your mind becomes a magnet for opportunity, your heart a vessel for provision, and your life a reflection of the infinite supply that has always been yours. The journey toward financial freedom and a debt-free future begins with this understanding. It begins with the unwavering recognition that wealth is not something to chase, something to earn through suffering, or something to grasp through anxiety. It is a gift, a divine inheritance, a natural state of being waiting to be acknowledged, claimed, and lived fully. This consciousness transforms not only the individual but also the world around them. Relationships with others, business ventures, and even everyday transactions take on a new quality of ease, flow, and cooperation. The energy of lack is replaced by the energy of plenty. The mind no longer operates in fear but in faith. The heart no longer tightens in worry but expands in gratitude. Every financial decision, every opportunity, every interaction becomes a reflection of the divine abundance that is already yours. The moment one begins to live from this understanding, the struggle disappears. Work is no longer a burden but a creative expression. Money is no longer a source of anxiety but a mirror of divine order. Life itself becomes a canvas for the expression of abundance. The concept of debt loses its grip, scarcity fades, and the natural inheritance of wealth begins to reveal itself in every corner of life. This understanding is not theoretical, it is practical. It transforms thinking, changes habits, and reshapes experiences. It is a truth that, once embraced, sets the soul free and aligns every circumstance with the divine intelligence that governs the universe. By living in this consciousness, by affirming daily that wealth is a divine inheritance, the individual steps into a reality where money flows without struggle, where provision meets every need, and where the experience of abundance is continuous. Every act, every thought, every choice become a demonstration of the truth that wealth is not earned by fear or force, but received as a natural right, a sacred gift from the infinite intelligence that created life itself. Fear and scarcity block abundance, faith and expectation attract it. These two forces, fear and faith, are the invisible currents that guide the flow of life, and they operate with absolute precision. Fear is the contraction of the mind, the tightening of the heart, and the closing of the soul to the infinite possibilities that surround us. It is a subtle force, often disguised as caution, practicality, or concern, yet its effect is profound. Every thought rooted in fear sends out a vibration that tells the universe that limitation is desired, that provision is insufficient, and that lack is inevitable. Scarcity, which is the outer reflection of inner fear, is not a condition imposed by circumstances. It is a response to the beliefs held within the mind. The mind, when filled with worry over bills, debts, or lack of opportunities, becomes a magnet for experiences that reinforce that very fear. Money slips away, opportunities are missed, and the sense of struggle intensifies, all because the mind has declared that limitation is true. Conversely, faith operates in an opposite yet equally powerful manner. Faith is the expansion of the mind, the opening of the heart, and the alignment of the soul with divine intelligence. It is the recognition that life, governed by infinite wisdom, is inherently abundant. Faith does not deny reality. It transcends fear by knowing that every need will be met, every obligation fulfilled, and every opportunity aligned perfectly for the good of all involved. Expectation is the practical expression of faith. It is not mere hope or wishful thinking, but a confident recognition that the invisible laws of the universe are responding on your behalf. When you expect provision, you set a course in consciousness that magnetizes abundance. Expectation shapes perception, influences decisions, and governs behavior. The individual who expects wealth and supply sees possibilities everywhere, recognizes opportunities in situations that others dismiss, and acts in ways that naturally lead to financial increase. In contrast, the individual dominated by fear sees obstacles, risks, and scarcity. The mind interprets every situation as a threat rather than a chance. This explains why some people seem perpetually unlucky with money, while others attract resources effortlessly. It is not chance, education, or experience alone, but the invisible law of thought in action. Thought is creative. Every belief, every fear, and every expectation moves into manifestation, forming circumstances, relationships, and financial realities in exact accordance with inner consciousness. Scarcity is always a mental condition before it appears in the material world. Bills unpaid, debts mounting, and opportunities lost are effects, not causes. They mirror the inner state of mind, and ert. When fear governs thought, the subconscious mind, which acts as the creative agent of life, interprets fear as a command for limitation. The body tenses, the mind overcomplicates, and the soul contracts. The invisible law responds with circumstances that reinforce the fear, often creating a cycle of struggle that seems impossible to break. Faith, on the other hand, creates freedom. When the mind is centered in faith, the subconscious arranges events to support life, to provide abundance, and to align circumstances with expectation. Faith and expectation are not passive, they are dynamic forces that operate with precision in the unseen realm. They organize circumstances, attract the right people, and reveal solutions that the anxious mind cannot perceive. Fear often masquerades as realism or practicality. I cannot afford this, I will never be able to pay off this debt, or there is not enough for me are statements of contraction that produce the very reality they describe. Haze words, spoken repeatedly or held as persistent thoughts, impress the subconscious mind with limitation. The universe, which is responsive to consciousness, mirrors these thoughts in the outer world. Opportunities shrink, resources vanish, and challenges multiply. Faith, in contrast, speaks with the authority of law. I am always supplied. My needs are met before I ask, and abundance flows to me freely are declarations that align consciousness with the infinite supply. The mind begins to perceive avenues for increase that were invisible before, and the individual moves confidently toward solutions. Faith does not eliminate obstacles, but gives the individual power to navigate them with intelligence, creativity, and calm assurance. The emotional state is as important as the mental state in attracting abundance. Fear generates anxiety, stress, and a sense of tension that constricts thought and action. Anxiety narrows perception and creates confusion, which limits the ability to recognize opportunity. Faith generates peace, clarity, and a sense of spaciousness that allows the mind to see beyond immediate circumstances. Expectation, when rooted in faith, shapes action that is intelligent, timely, and effective. Fear leads to reaction, hesitation, and avoidance. Faith leads to initiative, confidence, and creative problem-solving. Every financial decision, every step taken in business or personal affairs, is influenced by whether fear or faith governs consciousness. The universal law is impartial and exact. It does not care about status, education, or past experiences. It responds to the vibration of thought and emotion. Fear produces scarcity, faith produces abundance. This law operates continuously, whether one is aware of it or not. One can observe this in everyday life. When the mind is filled with worry about paying a bill, the energy of limitation constricts opportunities. Conversely, when the mind rests in confident expectation, solutions appear. Money company, MS from unforeseen sources, and circumstances align with ease. This is why so many people report that help arrives miraculously or just in time. These are not coincidences. They are the precise manifestation of faith and expectation in action. Practicing faith requires conscious effort, for the mind is naturally inclined to fear. Daily affirmations, meditation, and visualization of abundance help impress the subconscious mind with the certainty of provision. Repeating statements of confidence in divine supply, imagining financial obligations being met effortlessly, and feeling the reality of wealth in the present moment are essential exercises. Each thought of fear removed and replaced with faith strengthens the magnetic power of expectation. Over time, this shifts the habitual patterns of consciousness from contraction to expansion, from lack to plenty. Faith and expectation also influence how one interacts with money in practical ways. When abundance is expected, spending, investing, and saving are approached with clarity, confidence, and purpose. Decisions are not made from panic but from intelligence and insight. Opportunities for increase are recognized, and risks are taken with discernment rather than desperation. Fear-driven decisions, by contrast, are often reactive, short-sighted, and constricting, reinforcing scarcity. Faith opens the mind to cooperation, collaboration, and creative solutions that multiply resources instead of diminishing them. Even in difficult circumstances, faith and expectation have the power to transform reality. A mind anchored in fear sees only obstacles and limitations. A mind anchored in faith sees solutions, pathways, and potential. The same situation can produce fear or abundance, depending on the consciousness brought to it. This principle applies to business, personal finances, investments, relationships, and every area of life where resources are involved. The inner state governs the outer experience. The law is precise. What is held in thought, emotion with conviction moves into form with certainty. Faith is strengthened when one observes evidence of provision. In daily life, Gratitude for what has been received, no matter how small, reinforces the belief that supply is continuous. Expectation is cultivated by acknowledging past instances where resources arrived, bills were paid, or opportunities emerged in unexpected ways. The mind begins to operate from certainty rather than worry. Fear diminishes because it is no longer supported by habitual thought patterns. Scarcity, once a dominant experience, is replaced by the ongoing recognition of abundance as the natural state of life. Faith and expectation are not merely mental exercises, they are states of being. The soul vibrates with these energies, attracting circumstances that reflect inner truth. The subconscious mind, which governs the creative process, responds immediately, organizing events, people, and resources to match belief. Fear and scarcity close doors, faith and expectation open them. Fear contracts life, faith expands it. The individual who embraces faith as a guiding principle begins to notice that challenges are no longer threats, but opportunities for demonstration of provision. When fear arises, it is recognized as a signal to return to trust. When scarcity appears, it is met with expectation of abundance. Every thought, word, and feeling is examined for alignment with faith rather than fear. Through consistent practice, this consciousness becomes habitual, and the magnetism of abundance strengthens, drawing wealth, resources, and opportunities with increasing ease and precision. Faith and expectation also cultivate resilience. In moments of apparent lack, the individual maintains a sense of calm assurance. Financial setbacks are temporary, circumstances are fluid, and supply is inevitable. This resilience is not stubborn optimism. It is the practical operation of universal law. Fear produces vulnerability and limitation. Faith produces strength and expansion. Over time, the accumulation of small faith-driven actions compounds into large manifestations of abundance. The individual begins to live in a reality where provision is constant, where debt dissolves, and where opportunities multiply without effort. Debt is a mistaken belief that dissolves when aligned with divine law. From the earliest moments of human understanding, the idea of debt has been treated as an inescapable condition, a necessary consequence of living in a world of scarcity. People are taught that borrowing, owing, and financial obligation are part of life, and that freedom from them is rare or even impossible. Yet this notion is a fundamental misperception, arising not from external circumstances but from the state of consciousness within the individual. Debt, in its deepest essence, is not a material reality but a mental state, a belief that there is insufficient supply, that provision is delayed, or that the universe does not operate in a manner that can support all needs simultaneously. It is a conviction rooted in fear, limitation, and the sense of separation from the infinite source. When one begins to recognize that debt is an effect, not a cause, the entire approach to financial life transforms. By understanding that all material conditions originate in thought, and that the universe responds with perfect accuracy to the mental and emotional patterns impressed upon it, one realizes that debt has no power over those who live in alignment with divine law. The law of divine abundance operates impartially and consistently. It does not acknowledge the illusion of limitation because limitation itself is a creation of fear-based thought. The belief in debt is sustained by the repetition of statements such as "I cannot pay this," "I owe more than I earn," or "there is never enough for me." Each thought and each word serves to impress the subconscious mind with lack, creating a magnetic field that attracts circumstances reflecting this limitation. The universe, responding to this exact pattern, organizes experiences in the material world that mirror the inner belief, bringing about situations of indebtedness, delayed payments, and financial stress. Conversely, when one aligns thought, feeling, and spoken word with the principle of abundance, the subconscious mind begins to act as an instrument for dissolving debt. It works quietly and persistently, arranging circumstances, revealing opportunities, and guiding decisions that restore financial balance and remove obligations effortlessly. Debt persists because it is treated as an external force rather than a reflection of inner consciousness. People often blame banks, creditors, or economic conditions, failing to see that every financial circumstance is a reflection of belief and expectation. While external conditions may present challenges, they cannot dictate outcomes unless supported by internal agreement. A person who understands the divine law of supply knows that these conditions are only temporary mirrors of thought patterns. By changing the inner state from limitation to expectation, from fear to trust, the external appearance of debt begins to dissolve naturally. This does not require forceful action, manipulation, or struggle, because divine law responds to the state of mind rather than the frantic activity of the outer world. When an individual accepts that debt is a mistaken belief, they begin to examine the mental attitudes that have sustained it. Fear, worry, guilt, and a sense of unworthiness are all contributors. Worry about bills, anxiety over income, and the feeling of inadequacy create an inner contraction that manifests as financial pressure. Guilt about past spending or perceived mistakes reinforces the sense that the universe is unforgiving and supply is limited. These mental RNS act as magnets, attracting experiences of debt and obligation to match the inner vibration. By consciously releasing fear, forgiving oneself, and affirming the presence of divine supply, one can begin to shift this magnetic pattern. The subconscious mind, once impressed with truth, arranges circumstances to reflect a new reality, demonstrating that debt has no inherent power and only exists as long as it is believed to exist. The practical aspect of this understanding is seen in the way one approaches money, obligations, and opportunities. Instead of reacting with anxiety or attempting to force results through struggle, the individual takes inspired action from a place of calm assurance. Bills are met with confidence, income streams are recognized and utilized wisely, and opportunities for increase are pursued with clarity rather than desperation. The outer world begins to operate as a mirror of inner faith, showing that debt was never a fixed reality but a temporary illusion sustained by mental patterns. In this way, the experience of indebtedness transforms from a state of fear to a demonstration of divine order, illustrating that supply always precedes demand, and that obligations are met before they are even recognized in material form. Debt, when viewed as a mistaken belief, also changes the way one perceives obligations to others. Instead of fear and avoidance, one approaches financial commitments with a sense of responsibility grounded in faith rather than tension. The individual recognizes that payment and provision are part of a larger law of abundance, and that by trusting in divine intelligence, every obligation will be fulfilled in perfect timing. This trust does not negate practical effort, it harmonizes effort with law. Actions are taken wisely and efficiently, but without panic or compulsion, allowing circumstances to align naturally. The difference between fear-driven repayment and faith-driven fulfillment is remarkable. One produces stress and struggle, while the other produces ease and seemingly miraculous results. Understanding debt as a mistaken belief also highlights the role of expectation in financial life. Expectation shapes the flow of supply, directing the unseen forces to provide solutions, opportunities, and resources. When expectation is aligned with divine law, the experience of scarcity diminishes and the appearance of money, assets, and abundance increases. The subconscious mind, which governs creative manifestation, receives clear instruction and moves with precision, arranging life in a way that eliminates the outer reality of debt. This demonstrates that debt is never an external inevitability, but a condition entirely dependent upon inner consciousness. Forgiveness, both of self and circumstances, is another essential element in dissolving debt. Many people carry the weight of past financial mistakes, believing that past errors have created an unalterable chain of obligations. Yet divine law operates in the present moment and responds to current consciousness. By forgiving oneself, releasing guilt, and affirming that supply is constant and complete, one resets the mental and emotional patterns that have sustained indebtedness. The law immediately responds, and the process of dissolving obligations begins. This principle applies to every area of life. Old debts, overdue accounts, and forgotten obligations all fall away as the mind embraces truth, faith, and alignment with infinite supply. The way one speaks about money also influences the experience of debt. Language reflects and reinforces inner beliefs. Statements like "I can't afford this," "I am drowning in debt," or "I will never get out of this" serve as self-fulfilling prophecies, imprinting limitation on the subconscious mind. Conversely, affirmations such as "I am always supplied," "every obligation is met in perfect order," and "abundance flows to me freely" impress the mind with the truth of infinite provision. Words, when spoken with faith and clarity, become instruments through which debt dissolves and abundance manifests. Debt is further revealed as a mistaken belief when one observes the way opportunities and resources appear once fear is replaced with expectation. New sources of income, creative ideas, unexpected assistance, and solutions previously unseen all emerge effortlessly. The law of supply responds to the mental state, not to panic or desperation. The individual who operates from faith and alignment with divine intelligence sees debt not as a burden, but as a temporary reflection of outdated thinking, easily corrected through conscious change. Daily practice of aligning consciousness with the principle of abundance reinforces this understanding. Visualization, affirmations, meditation, and focused gratitude create a strong impression on the subconscious mind. Each day, the individual reaffirms that debt is an illusion, that provision is constant, and that divine law governs all material circumstances. Over time, this repeated alignment transforms habitual thought patterns, reprogramming the mind from one of limitation to one of endless supply. The outer world inevitably reflects this inner truth, and what was once experienced as financial pressure becomes a demonstration of divine intelligence at work. Debt, when perceived through the lens of divine law, loses its power. It is no longer something to fear, struggle against, or accept as inevitable. It is a temporary outer reflection of inner belief, which can be changed at any moment through thought, word, and expectation. By maintaining focus on supply, releasing fear, forgiving past mistakes, speaking truth, and holding faith in the constant presence of abundance, the mind, heart, and soul align with the universal law. The results are tangible and unmistakable. Obligations are met, resources flow freely, and the experience of indebtedness transforms into the effortless manifestation of financial freedom and divine provision. The understanding that debt is a mistaken belief also impacts the way one plans for the future. Rather than approaching finances with tension or scarcity thinking, one approaches them with clarity, foresight, and confidence. Budgeting, saving, investing, and strategic action are all undertaken from a place of alignment, not fear. This creates a pattern of financial stability that naturally prevents the accumulation of new obligations while dissolving old ones. The subconscious mind, impressed with faith and expectation, orchestrates events, people, and opportunities to ensure that provision continues uninterrupted, demonstrating that debt is never fixed but entirely dependent on consciousness. Right thinking, words, and actions create a debt-free, abundant life. The foundation of every material circumstance lies in the mind, and the thoughts we entertain govern the reality we experience. The mind is not a passive observer but an active creator, and every idea impressed upon it shapes the life that unfolds. Right thinking is the deliberate alignment of the mind with principles of abundance, faith, and divine intelligence. It is the conscious choice to dwell upon possibilities rather than limitations, to focus on supply rather than lack, and to affirm the natural provision that flows from the infinite source. When the mind is trained to think in terms of wealth, not as a struggle to acquire but as a natural state already present, the subconscious mind immediately recognizes the pattern and begins to organize circumstances accordingly. The process of becoming debt-free is initiated in thought long before it appears in material reality. Every financial obligation, every overdue account, and every missed opportunity is first a reflection of the inner state of consciousness. Right thinking is inseparable from right words. Language is the bridge between inner thought and outer manifestation, and every word spoken carries creative power. To speak with fear, doubt, or scarcity is to reinforce the same limitations in the subconscious mind. Statements such as, "I can't pay this," "money is never enough," or "I will never get ahead" serve to attract circumstances that validate these thoughts. Conversely, right words affirm supply, ease, and abundance. Statements such as "I am always provided for," "every need is met in perfect order," or "I move freely in wealth and opportunity" impress the subconscious mind with truth, aligning the individual with the natural flow of provision. Words, when chosen deliberately and spoken with faith, act as instruments that manifest a life free from debt. Repetition and consistency are key. The mind must be continually impressed with the reality of abundance until it becomes a permanent pattern of thought and action. Right actions flow naturally from right thinking and speaking. When the mind is aligned with abundance, when the words confirm supply, the individual is guided toward behaviors that support financial freedom. These actions are not forced or desperate, they are inspired and intelligent, flowing effortlessly from the clarity of thought and confidence in provision. One pays bills promptly, manages resources wisely, and seizes opportunities with discernment. The universe responds to these actions because they are consistent with the law of supply. The individual no longer struggles, manipulates, or reacts out of fear, but moves in harmony with circumstances, allowing debt to dissolve as natural order is restored. Actions that arise from fear, on the other hand, are often hasty, misdirected, and inefficient, reinforcing limitation rather than eliminating it. Right actions, therefore, are the tangible reflection of the inner state, the practical manifestation of thought and word in material life. The process of creating a debt-free life begins with awareness. The individual must examine habitual thoughts and words, identifying those that perpetuate scarcity and indebtedness. Often these thoughts are subtle, a passing worry about bills, a negative assumption about future income, or a casual statement that reflects lack. Each of these reinforces the magnetic pattern of limitation. By bringing conscious attention to these patterns, the individual can replace them with thoughts, words, and affirmations that align with abundance. Visualization is a powerful tool in this process. By seeing clearly in the mind's eye a life of financial freedom, debt paid in full, and resources flowing easily, the subconscious mind receives a detailed template to organize circumstances in harmony with this vision. Repetition, emotion, and conviction in this visualization amplify its effect, ensuring that right thinking translates into right action. Right thinking, words, and actions are not isolated practices, they are interdependent and mutually reinforcing. Thoughts influence words, words influence actions, and actions reinforce thoughts. This cyclical process is the engine that creates a debt-free, abundant life. When one component is misaligned, thoughts of fear, words of scarcity, actions of desperation, the cycle produces limitation. When all three are aligned with divine principles of supply, harmony, and provision, the cycle produces prosperity effortlessly. Each day becomes an opportunity to strengthen this alignment through conscious thought, careful speech, and intelligent behavior. The emotional dimension also plays a critical role in this process. Fear, anxiety, and guilt constrict thought, distort perception, and limit the effectiveness of words and actions. Peace, confidence, and gratitude expand the mind, clarifying perception and enhancing the power of both speech and action. Right thinking is therefore inseparable from the cultivation of a positive emotional state. When the heart is filled with gratitude for what has been received and confidence in future provision, the subconscious mind is impressed with certainty, and the outer world responds with experiences of abundance. Emotional resonance amplifies thought and word, making actions more effective and aligning life with divine law. One practical method for maintaining right thinking is the use of affirmations. Carefully chosen statements, repeated with conviction, impress the subconscious mind and shape consciousness. Affirmations such as "every obligation is met in perfect order," "I am constantly supplied with what I need," and "I live free from debt and lack" provide clear instruction to the creative intelligence of the mind. Repetition, accompanied by belief and feeling, ensures that these statements move from conscious thought to subconscious acceptance, where they begin to influence behavior and circumstances. Words spoken aloud, written, or mentally repeated act as seeds planted in fertile ground that grow into tangible manifestations of abundance. Right actions extend beyond personal finance to the management of resources, relationships, and opportunities. An individual aligned with abundance approaches money with clarity and discernment. Bills are organized and paid on time, spending is measured and purposeful, and investments are made wisely and without fear. Opportunities are recognized and acted upon promptly, and unnecessary obligations or expenditures are avoided. Each action is a reflection of inner alignment, demonstrating that financial freedom is not merely an idea but a practical reality that emerges naturally from correct thought and speech. The universe cooperates fully with consistent, intelligent action, providing unexpected assistance, timely opportunities, and resources from unseen directions. Consistency is crucial in the creation of a debt-free life. One day of correct thinking, words, and actions is insufficient to reprogram habitual patterns of scarcity. The mind must be impressed repeatedly with the truth of abundance. The spoken word must continually affirm supply, and actions must consistently reflect intelligent management of resources. Over time, this persistence strengthens the magnetic power of consciousness, aligning the individual with continuous provision. Old debts dissolve, new opportunities arise, and the experience of lack is replaced by a natural expectation of abundance. Right thinking also influences decision-making. A mind trained to see abundance rather than limitation evaluates opportunity from a position of confidence rather than fear. Investments are chosen wisely. Business decisions are guided by insight rather than anxiety. And financial commitments are approached with assurance rather than hesitation. Right thinking produces discernment. Right words reinforce clarity and expectation. And right actions ensure that the mind's vision manifests in material life. This integrated process demonstrates that debt is not inevitable, but entirely dependent on alignment of thought, word, and behavior. Visualization, gratitude, and affirmation are complemented by inspired action. While divine law responds to inner alignment, it also directs outward behavior. Right actions are those that naturally arise when the mind and heart are in harmony with abundance. They are intelligent, timely, and effective. Actions taken from fear, obligation, or desperation are misaligned and often produce additional challenges. Actions taken from faith, clarity, and understanding of divine provisio are efficient, creative, and harmonize circumstances with the desired reality of debt-free abundance. The principle of right thinking, words, and actions also extends to interpersonal interactions. Financial arrangements, negotiations, and business dealings are approached with honesty, integrity, and clarity. Words are spoken with care, promises are kept, and commitments are made from a position of confidence rather than fear. This integrity attracts cooperation, builds trust, and creates circumstances in which abundance flows naturally, demonstrating that debt-free living is not only a personal matter but also a reflection of universal law in relationships and community. Right thinking, words, and actions operate in unison to shape a life of financial freedom. The mind, when aligned with divine intelligence, perceives opportunities for increase. Words spoken with faith impress the subconscious mind and attract provision. Actions, guided by clarity and intelligence, bring the vision into tangible reality. Over time, this harmonious cycle transforms habitual patterns of scarcity into patterns of abundance. Debts dissolve, resources multiply, and the experience of life shifts from struggle to ease. Daily practice reinforces these principles. Morning affirmations, visualization exercises, mindful speech, and intentional actions impress the subconscious mind repeatedly, ensuring that abundance becomes a permanent pattern of consciousness. Emotional alignment, cultivating gratitude, confidence, and peace, enhances the effectiveness of thought, word, and deed. Every moment becomes an opportunity to strengthen alignment with divine law, reinforcing the magnetism of abundance, dissolving debt, and creating a life in which wealth, opportunity, and provision are continuous and effortless. The integration of right thinking, words, and actions also encourages flexibility and creativity. When the mind is free from fear and aligned with faith, solutions to financial challenges become apparent, opportunities are recognized quickly, and obstacles are navigated with intelligence rather than panic. Right thinking creates clarity, right words reinforce certainty, and right actions manifest practical solutions. The law of abundance responds precisely, eliminating debt and supporting ongoing financial growth, demonstrating that the combination of correct thought, language, and behavior is the ultimate tool for a debt-free, prosperous life. A debt-free future begins in consciousness before it ever appears in material form. The foundation of all material circumstances is first laid in the mind. What we experience as money, debt, or financial freedom is a direct reflection of our inner beliefs, thoughts, and expectations. Consciousness is the creative field from which all reality emerges, and until the mind is aligned with the principles of abundance, no external change can permanently alter financial conditions. The idea that freedom from debt can be achieved solely through external effort is a common misconception. While wise financial management, planning, and action are necessary, they alone are insufficient without the conscious understanding that abundance is a natural state and debt is a reflection of misaligned thought. Every bill, loan, or financial obligation is first conceived as a thought in consciousness. It exists materially because it has been mentally reinforced over time. Therefore, to create a debt-free future, one must begin by cultivating a mental state of expectation, faith, and certainty regarding supply. The subconscious mind plays a critical role in manifesting financial conditions. It does not distinguish between imagined scenarios, spoken words, or deeply held beliefs. It receives impressions from conscious thought and emotion, and moves to organize circumstances in exact accordance with them. When the subconscious mind is impressed with fear, scarcity, and worry, it arranges life to reflect these conditions. Creating experiences of debt, financial pressure, and limitation, When the subconscious mind is impressed with faith, expectation, and the certainty of supply, it organizes circumstances that reflect abundance, opportunities, and financial freedom. This is why two people in similar external situations may experience vastly different outcomes. The difference lies in the consciousness with which they approach life. The one anchored in the knowledge of infinite supply attracts solutions, meets obligations with ease, and experiences debt dissolution, while the one anchored in fear attracts ongoing limitation. Consciousness is not static, it is shaped by habitual thought, repeated words, and consistent emotional states. If a person has long accepted the reality of debt, their mind is accustomed to thinking in terms of lack. They may unconsciously repeat phrases like, "I will never get out of this, there is never enough, or I am trapped financially." These thoughts, repeated over time, impress the subconscious mind deeply, creating a magnetic field that continually attracts confirmation of limitation. To shift this pattern, the individual must consciously replace these thoughts with those that reflect freedom, abundance, and divine supply. Affirmations such as "I am always supplied," "Every need is met in perfect order," and "I live free from debt and limitation," serve as tools to reprogram the mind. The repeated use of these statements, accompanied by feeling and visualization, impresses the subconscious with a new pattern of expectation, one that brings about tangible evidence of financial freedom. Visualization is an essential component in aligning consciousness with a debt-free future. When the mind repeatedly pictures obligations being paid in full, bills being met with ease, and resources flowing freely, the subconscious mind receives a detailed blueprint for material manifestation. Visualization is most effective when it engages all senses: the sight of money in the bank, the feeling of relief and freedom, the sound of confirmation that obligations are cleared, and the emotional state of gratitude and joy. This immersive mental practice convinces the subconscious mind that financial freedom is already real, prompting it to align external circumstances accordingly. Repetition and consistency are crucial, as habitual thought patterns take time to reprogram. The mind, once conditioned to lack, requires persistent impressing with truth in order to create lasting change. Expectation is the practical expression of this aligned consciousness. It is not wishful thinking but a confident understanding that divine law governs provision and that every obligation will be met in perfect order. Expectation acts as a guiding force, directing attention, perception, and behavior toward opportunities, solutions, and timely provision. The individual who expects abundance is naturally attuned to recognize channels of income, investment possibilities, and financial strategies that might otherwise be overlooked. Expectation also amplifies inspired action, ensuring that the choices one makes align with the reality they wish to create. When expectation is strong and unwavering, it magnetizes resources and circumstances, facilitating the dissolution of debt and the establishment of financial freedom. Faith complements expectation by maintaining inner stability and peace. While expectation directs attention to opportunity and solution, faith provides the assurance that all needs will be met regardless of current appearances. It is the inner knowing that the universe is abundant and that provision is always available. Faith eliminates panic and anxiety, which are natural byproducts of fear-based thinking, and replaces them with calm assurance. In this state, the mind is free to act with clarity, the heart is open to receiving, and the soul is aligned with universal intelligence. Faith prevents temporary setbacks or apparent shortages from undermining progress, sustaining the consciousness of abundance even in challenging circumstances. Right thinking, words, and actions are integral to this process. Thoughts must be deliberately aligned with abundance, words must affirm supply, and actions must reflect intelligent and inspired management of resources. Together, they impress the subconscious mind and set in motion the creative processes that bring financial freedom into material reality. Actions inspired by aligned thought are efficient and effective, guided by intelligence rather than fear. Bills are paid on time, spending is intentional, and opportunities for income and growth are recognized and utilized. The combination of mental alignment, affirmative speech, and inspired action produces measurable results, demonstrating that debt-free living originates in consciousness and manifests in the physical world. Gratitude is another critical element. The mind and heart that are thankful for what has been received, no matter how small, generate a vibration of abundance that reinforces the magnetism of supply. Gratitude shifts focus away from lack, creating space for further provision to flow. Daily recognition of blessings, opportunities, and resources strengthens the subconscious impression of abundance, ensuring that consciousness continues to attract solutions and opportunities. This practice counteracts habitual thoughts of scarcity and debt, steadily replacing them with a dominant awareness of provision and freedom. Forgiveness also plays a role in creating a debt-free future. Many individuals carry emotional weight connected to past financial mistakes, obligations, or perceived errors. Guilt and self-recrimination reinforce the subconscious belief in limitation, sustaining experiences of indebtedness. By forgiving oneself and releasing these emotional burdens, the mind becomes receptive to new impressions of abundance. The subconscious mind, freed from patterns of fear and guilt, begins to organize circumstances that reflect financial freedom, illustrating that emotional alignment is inseparable from conscious creation of a debt-free life. The practice of consistency ensures that aligned consciousness becomes habitual. Daily repetition of affirmative thoughts, visualization of abundance, expression of gratitude, and inspired action strengthens the mind's impression of financial freedom. Each day reinforces the mental pattern that debt is temporary, that provision is continuous, and that a debt-free life is both natural and attainable. Over time, these practices reshape habitual thought, dissolve fear-based beliefs, and create a permanent orientation toward abundance. Awareness of external circumstances is also important. The debt-free consciousness does not ignore reality but interprets it correctly. Temporary shortages, financial challenges, or unexpected obligations are understood as signals to strengthen alignment with abundance rather than evidence of limitation. The mind remains focused on solution, expectation, and faith, allowing the subconscious to orchestrate circumstances in harmony with this consciousness. Every apparent obstacle becomes an opportunity to demonstrate the law of supply in action, reinforcing the principle that a debt-free life originates within consciousness before appearing materially. Financial planning and management, when guided by aligned consciousness, become natural extensions of thought, word, and faith. Budgeting, saving, investing, and timely payment of obligations are carried out without tension, worry, or struggle. Actions are inspired, informed, and harmonized with opportunity, ensuring that resources flow freely and debts dissolve. The outer world reflects inner truth. Abundance manifests as tangible financial freedom, illustrating that all provision begins in consciousness. The process also encourages a shift from reaction to creation. Rather than responding with panic to bills or financial pressures, the individual acts proactively, guided by the understanding that abundance is a natural state. Opportunities for additional income, cost-saving measures, or creative solutions are recognized before desperation arises. The mind, anchored in faith and expectation, functions as a powerful magnet for supply, continuously arranging circumstances that eliminate debt and establish financial ease. By cultivating this consciousness daily, the individual progressively aligns with divine law. Each thought, word, and action reinforces the pattern of abundance. Each act of gratitude and forgiveness strengthens the magnetic field of supply, and each inspired decision demonstrates the practical application of law in daily life. The subconscious mind, fully impressed with this pattern, orchestrates resources, people, and opportunities to create a debt-free future, showing that material circumstances are always a reflection of internal consciousness. The debt-free future is therefore not a distant goal achieved through struggle or force. It is a natural outcome of aligned consciousness. The individual who consistently maintains thoughts of abundance, speaks words of faith and supply, acts with clarity and intelligence, expresses gratitude, and releases fear or guilt positions themselves to experience financial freedom as an inevitable manifestation of law. The process begins within the mind, expands through emotion and word, and manifests as tangible results, demonstrating the ultimate truth that all debt, limitation, and scarcity are first created in consciousness and can be dissolved through its transformation.